Dr. Amanda Clark wiped the sweat from her forehead as she knelt beside the strange metal structure they had found buried beneath the red sand of Kepler 442c. The planet was supposed to be empty, just another dead rock circling a distant star. But the energy readings from orbit had told a different story. Now she knew why. The metal was unlike anything she had seen in her 20 years as an archaeologist. It felt warm to the touch despite the cold atmosphere, and strange symbols ran along its surface in patterns that made her eyes water if she looked too long. Jake Morrison crouched beside her, his scanner beeping frantically as it tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "Amanda, you need to see this," Jake said, his voice tight with excitement. He was the best linguist on the research vessel. New horizon, and if something had him this worked up, it was worth paying attention to. "These symbols, they're not like anything in our database, but there's something familiar about them." Commander Lisa Rodriguez stood nearby, her rifle ready despite the apparent emptiness of the planet. She had been against this expedition from the start, arguing that 3 people were not enough for a proper survey mission. Now, looking at the massive structure that seemed to stretch deep underground, Amanda was starting to think Lisa had been right. "How familiar?" Amanda asked, running her own scanner along the metal surface. The readings were impossible. The structure registered as being over 50,000 years old, yet the metal showed no signs of age or decay. If anything, it looked like it had been built yesterday. Jake pointed to a cluster of symbols near what appeared to be a sealed doorway. "See these marks here? They remind me of early Sanskrit, but that's impossible. Sanskrit developed on Earth, and this planet is 1,200 light-years away from home." Amanda felt a chill that had nothing to do with the thin atmosphere. She had spent her career studying alien civilizations, cataloging their rise and fall across the galaxy, but this was different. This felt human, even though humans had never been to this system before. "Lisa, can you get us a secure connection to the ship?" Amanda said. "Captain Bennett needs to know what we've found." The commander activated her communication device, but only static came through. She frowned and tried again with the same result. "Something's interfering with our signals. We're on our own until we get back to the surface." Amanda made a decision that would change everything. She approached the sealed doorway and placed her hand on a smooth section of metal beside the symbols. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the metal began to glow with a soft blue light, and the massive door slid open with barely a whisper. Jake stared at her in shock. "How did you know to do that?" "I didn't," Amanda admitted, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Something about the door had called to her, as if she had always known how to open it. The corridor beyond was lit by the same blue glow that had appeared when she touched the door. The walls were covered in more symbols, and as they walked deeper into the structure, Jake began taking pictures with his scanner. The symbols seemed to tell a story, though he couldn't read most of them yet. "Wait," he said suddenly, stopping before a section of wall where the symbols were clearer. "Amanda, I can read some of this. It's definitely related to Sanskrit, but it's older, much older. What does it say?" Jake ran his finger along the symbols as he translated. "Something about a great journey and a terrible enemy. And here, this word keeps appearing. I think it means weapon, but not just any weapon, a final weapon." They continued deeper into the structure, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with machinery that hummed with power despite its obvious age. In the center of the room stood a raised platform with what looked like a control console, but it was the walls of the chamber that made Amanda's breath catch in her throat. They were covered in images that told the story Jake had only partially translated from the symbols in the corridor. She saw star maps that included Earth's solar system, ships that looked almost human in design, and scenes of a desperate battle against creatures that seemed to devour everything in their path. "Jake, look at this," she whispered, pointing to one of the images. It showed a group of humans standing before the same type of machinery they were looking at now. But these humans wore clothing and equipment that was far more advanced than anything from Earth's current technology. Jake joined her at the wall, his scanner recording everything. "These people, They look human, but how is that possible? Humans have only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years. Lisa had remained near the entrance, but now she called out to them. We need to go. Now, my scanner is picking up energy signatures approaching from orbit. Multiple ships, and they're big. Amanda looked at the control console in the center of the room. Every instinct told her that touching it would be dangerous, but she also knew they couldn't leave without learning more. She approached the console carefully, noting that, like the door, it seemed designed for human hands. 5 minutes, she told Lisa. Just give me 5 minutes to see if I can access their records. She placed her hands on the console, and immediately the chamber filled with holographic displays. Text scrolled past in multiple languages, and Amanda recognized not just the Sanskrit-like script Jake had been translating, but also symbols that looked like ancient Latin and Egyptian hieroglyphs. One display showed a star map with Earth clearly marked, along with dozens of other systems. Lines connected them all, suggesting some kind of network or communication system. Another display showed technical specifications for weapons and ships that were far beyond human understanding, but it was the final display that made Amanda's blood run cold. It was a message, written in clear English despite being thousands of years old. To whoever finds this record, the message began, know that we were human, as you are human. We came to the stars seeking safety and found only war. The enemy we fought still exists somewhere in the dark between stars. This weapon is our gift to those who come after us. May you have the wisdom to use it only when all else fails. May God forgive us for what we have created. The message was signed with a name that made no sense. The architect. Jake grabbed Amanda's arm. We have to go now. Whatever's coming, it's almost here. Amanda downloaded as much data as she could to her scanner, then stepped back from the console. The holographic displays flickered and died, but the chamber remained lit with that soft blue glow as they ran back through the corridor toward the surface. Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that they had just awakened something that had been sleeping for a very long time. The weapon the ancient humans had created was still here, still waiting, and now that they had found it, she had a terrible suspicion that they were going to need it. Captain Ryan Bennett stared at the data streaming across his screen and felt his world shift beneath him. 3 hours had passed since Amanda's team had returned from the planet's surface, and every minute of analysis made their discovery more impossible to believe. The research station New Horizon orbited Kepler 442c like a metal moon, its laboratories working around the clock to process what Amanda had brought back. Jake Morrison hadn't left the linguistics lab since their return, his eyes red from staring at ancient symbols that shouldn't exist. In the archaeology section, Amanda paced back and forth while her computers tried to date artifacts that defied every law of science she knew. "Captain," called Beth Turner from the communications station. Beth was their best signals specialist, and she looked worried. "I'm picking up transmissions from multiple sources. Long-range sensors show at least 6 different fleets moving toward our position." Ryan moved to stand behind Beth's chair, watching the data flow across her monitors. The signals were in languages he didn't recognize, but the computer's translation systems were working overtime to decode them. "What are they saying?" "Most of it is military chatter, but I'm getting references to something called an energy signature. They detected the power spike when Dr. Clark activated whatever she found down there." In the main laboratory, Amanda looked up from her work as Ryan and Beth entered. Jake was hunched over a translation console, muttering to himself as he worked through another section of the ancient text. The data they had recovered filled dozens of screens around the room. "Tell me you figured out what we're dealing with," Ryan said. Amanda gestured to the largest screen, which showed a timeline that stretched back over 50,000 years. "What we found isn't just alien technology, Ryan, it's human technology. But from humans who should never have existed." "That's impossible. I thought so too, but look at this." Amanda called up a genetic analysis on her screen. "I ran tests on trace materials from the facility. The people who built it shared 99.7% of their DNA with modern humans. They were us, Ryan. They were literally us. Jake looked up from his work, his face pale with exhaustion. It gets worse. I've translated enough of their records to piece together the basic story. These humans, they achieved faster than light. Travel sometime around 50,000 years ago? They spread across the galaxy, setting up colonies on hundreds of worlds. But that's impossible, Beth said. Humans were barely using stone tools 50,000 years ago. According to our history books, yes, Amanda replied. But these records tell a different story. They suggest that human civilization rose and fell multiple times, and that our current civilization is just the latest attempt. Ryan sat down heavily in a nearby chair. As captain of a research vessel, he had seen strange things before, but nothing like this. What happened to them? Where did they go? They were fighting a war, Jake said, calling up another section of translated text, against something they called the Devourers. From what I can make out, these creatures didn't just conquer planets. They consumed them completely. Every living thing, every piece of technology, everything. Amanda activated another screen showing technical specifications that hurt to look at. The facility we found was some kind of weapons research station. They were developing something called Project Lazarus, a weapon designed to fight an enemy that conventional arms couldn't touch. And they succeeded? I think so, but the cost was enormous. The final entries in their logs suggest they had to abandon their colonies and retreat to somewhere safe, but not before leaving behind a network of these weapons for whoever came after them. Beth's communication console beeped urgently, and she hurried over to check it. Captain, we've got a problem. The lead fleet just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They're identifying themselves as the Zephyrian Collective. Ryan felt his stomach drop. The Zephyrians were known throughout this part of the galaxy as aggressive expansionists who took what they wanted and destroyed what they couldn't use. Their ships were powerful, their weapons devastating, and their reputation for mercy was non-existent. How many ships? Long-range sensors count? 47 vessels in the advanced fleet, with more coming. The largest ones are bigger than anything in our databases. Amanda looked at the captain with growing alarm. Ryan, if the Zephyrians are here, it means other powers will follow. Everyone in this sector will have detected that energy signature. When I activated the console, Jake stood up from his translation work, holding a datapad filled with new text. Captain, I found something else. The weapon these ancient humans built, it's still active down there. The facility is drawing power from the planet's core, and according to these readings, it's been charging for 50,000 years. Charging for what? That's what I'm trying to figure out, but some of these technical specifications are beyond anything I can understand. They talk about quantum consciousness manipulation and reality distortion fields. Whatever this weapon does, it doesn't just destroy things in the conventional sense. Beth called out from her station again. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. From the Zephyrian fleet? They're demanding we surrender the facility and all research materials immediately. Ryan activated the main communication system. The screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a Zephyrian warship. The alien commander was tall and reptilian, with scales that gleamed under the harsh lighting of his bridge. When he spoke, his voice carried the arrogance of someone used to being obeyed without question. Human vessel, I am War Prime Zethkar of the Zephyrian Collective. You have activated a forbidden technology, and by ancient treaty, custody of such weapons belongs to the Collective. You will transfer all personnel to the planet's surface and abandon your ship immediately. I'm afraid I can't do that, Ryan replied, trying to keep his voice steady. This is human space, and we're conducting legitimate research under galactic law. The Zephyrian's expression didn't change, but Ryan could see movement on the alien bridge as weapon systems came online. Human law means nothing here. You have 1 hour to comply, or we will take the facility by force. The transmission ended, leaving the research station in tense silence. Amanda moved to the captain's side. Ryan, we can't let them have this technology. If the Zephyrians get control of a weapon system this powerful, they'll use it to conquer half the galaxy. What choice do we have? We're a research vessel with minimal defenses. They've got 47 warships and more coming. Jake looked up. From his datapad, his expression grim. Actually, we might have more options than we think. I've been reading about the activation protocols for the weapon system. It's designed to respond only to human genetic signatures and consciousness patterns. Meaning what? Meaning the Zephyrians can take the facility, but they can't use it. Only humans can activate the weapon. Beth interrupted their conversation with another urgent call. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations from the planet's surface. The facility is doing something. Amanda rushed to her scanner readings and saw patterns that made no sense. It's like the weapon system is responding to the presence of the alien fleet. Power levels are rising on their own. Ryan made a decision. That would change all their lives. Beth, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we found and transmit all our data. If something happens to us, someone needs to know the truth about human history. And what about the Zephyrians? Ryan looked at his small crew, these 3 people who had stumbled onto the greatest discovery in human history. We go back down to the facility. If this weapon was left for humanity by our ancestors, then maybe it's time we learned how to use it, Amanda nodded grimly. The ancient humans faced extinction and survived. Maybe they left us more than just a weapon. Maybe they left us a chance. The shuttle descended toward Kepler 442c's surface while explosions lit up the space above them. Commander Lisa Rodriguez piloted the craft with steady hands despite the chaos erupting around the research station. Through the viewports, Amanda could see the Zephyrian fleet engaging the automated defense systems that had mysteriously activated when the aliens approached. How much time do we have? Amanda asked, checking her equipment one final time. The station's defenses are holding. For now, Lisa replied, but those aren't standard Zephyrian ships up there. Some of those vessels are from species I don't even recognize. Word has spread fast about what we found. Jake Morrison sat across from Amanda, his portable translator working overtime to process the flood of data they had downloaded from the facility. His face was pale, but his eyes held a determination she had never seen before. Amanda, I've figured out more of the activation sequence, he said quietly. The weapon doesn't just require human genetics. It needs someone who understands what they're choosing to do. What do you mean? The ancient humans built safeguards into the system. The weapon won't activate unless the user fully comprehends the consequences. It's not just about pressing buttons or speaking commands. You have to make a conscious choice to accept responsibility for what happens next. The shuttle touched down near the facility entrance, and immediately Amanda could feel the change in the air. The entire area hummed with energy that seemed to vibrate through her bones. The symbols on the facility's exterior walls were glowing brighter than before, pulsing in rhythm like a massive heartbeat. Tony Sullivan, the station's chief engineer, had insisted on joining their small team despite Captain Bennett's protests. Now he emerged from the shuttle with a collection of scanning equipment that would help them understand what they were dealing with. Energy readings are off the charts, Tony reported, his instruments beeping frantically. Whatever's powering this place, it's drawing energy from sources I can't identify. It's like the facility is tapping into the fundamental forces of the universe itself. They entered the facility through the same corridor Amanda had used hours earlier, but everything had changed. The blue glow was brighter now, and the symbols on the walls seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. New passages had opened, leading deeper into the structure than they had explored before. The facility is expanding, Jake observed, consulting his scanner. The computer systems are activating sections that were dormant before. They followed the main corridor to the central chamber, but what they found there made Amanda stop in her tracks. The control console had transformed from a simple platform into a complex array of holographic displays and control surfaces. Above it all, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy rotated slowly, showing hundreds of star systems marked with the same symbols they had seen throughout the facility. My God, Tony whispered, it's a network. These ancient humans didn't just build one weapon. They built hundreds of them, scattered across the entire galaxy. Amanda approached the central console carefully, noting that it seemed to respond to her presence. The holographic displays shifted to show information she could actually understand, as if the system was adapting itself to her knowledge level. "Jake, I need you to keep translating," she said. "Tony, monitor the power systems. Lisa, watch our backs. Something tells me we're not going to be alone down here much longer." As Amanda studied the console, Jake worked frantically to decode the text appearing on auxiliary displays. The story he pieced together was more incredible than anything they had imagined. Amanda, according to this, the weapon isn't designed to destroy enemy fleets. It's something called a Genesis engine, and it works by altering the fundamental laws of physics in localized space. Altering them how? It creates zones where consciousness can directly interface with reality. Within the affected area, thought becomes action, intention becomes law. The ancient humans didn't build a weapon of destruction. They built a tool for forced evolution. Tony looked up from his instruments with growing alarm. Whatever this thing does, it's preparing to do it. Now, power levels are approaching critical thresholds, and I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions forming around the planet. Above them, the sound of the space battle grew more intense. Through their communication link with the station, they could hear Captain Bennett coordinating defensive actions while more alien fleets arrived in the system. "Amanda," Lisa called from her position near the entrance, "my sensors are picking up movement in the lower levels." "Something's active down there." Amanda made her choice. She placed both hands on the central control surface and felt the system respond to her touch. Immediately, information flooded her mind, not through her eyes or ears, but directly into her consciousness. She saw visions of the ancient human civilization, their desperate flight from Earth when a cosmic catastrophe threatened to destroy their homeworld, their discovery of the Devourers and the long war that followed, but more than that, she experienced their memories as if they were her own. She felt their fear, their determination, their love for the species they were trying to protect. The Genesis engine wasn't just a weapon, it was their gift to future generations. A tool that could defend humanity against threats that conventional weapons couldn't touch. "The Devourers," Amanda said, her voice distant as she processed the flood of information. "They're not just conquerors. They're something worse. They consume consciousness itself, turning entire civilizations into extensions of their own will." "Are they still out there?" Jake asked. "Yes, and they're coming back. The ancient humans detected their return before they disappeared. That's why they built this network. They knew we would need it." The facility shuddered as something massive moved in the levels below them. Tony's instruments went wild as energy readings spiked beyond measurement. "Amanda, we need to make a decision now," Lisa urged. "Whatever's happening, it's happening fast." Amanda saw through the facility's sensors what was approaching. Not just the Zephyrian fleet above, but something else emerging from deep space beyond the system's edge. Ships that were wrong in ways her mind couldn't fully process, vessels that seemed to bend light around them and leave trails of darkness in space. "The Devourers," she whispered. "They're here." Through the network connection, Amanda could sense other Genesis engine facilities across the galaxy beginning to respond to the approaching threat. Automated systems that had slept for 50,000 years were coming online, waiting for human consciousness to guide them. "I understand now," Amanda said, her hands moving across the control surface with knowledge she had never learned. "The ancient humans didn't disappear. They evolved beyond the need for physical form, but they left these tools for us. The Genesis engine doesn't just change physics, it changes us." "Changes us how?" Tony demanded. "It makes us capable of defending not just our own species, but consciousness itself. The Devourers feed on awareness, on the ability to think and feel and choose. The Genesis engine creates zones where that can't be taken away." The facility's main chamber filled with new holographic displays showing the battle above. Zephyrian ships were falling back as the Devourer vessels emerged from hyperspace, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light of nearby stars. Amanda felt the weight of choice settling on her shoulders. She could activate the Genesis engine and create a sanctuary around this system, but doing so would change everyone within it. Humans, Zephyrians, and any other species in the area would be transformed, elevated to a higher level of consciousness that could resist the Devourer threat. But there would be no going back. "Jake, translate this section," she said. Pointing to a cluster of symbols that had appeared on the central display, Jake worked quickly, his portable translator struggling with the complex concepts. "It's a warning. Once the Genesis engine activates, at full power, anyone within its influence will be permanently changed. Will become something more than human, but also something other than human." Amanda looked at her companions, these three people who had followed her into the depths of a mystery that was reshaping everything they thought they knew about their species. "The choice is ours," she said quietly. "We can activate the system and defend this galaxy against the Devourers, but we'll never be the same. Or we can let events take their natural course and hope that conventional weapons can stop an enemy our ancestors couldn't defeat." Above them, the first Devourer ship reached the outer edge of the system, and Amanda felt a chill of wrongness that went beyond physical sensation. Whatever those creatures were, they were the antithesis of everything life represented. She placed her hands on the activation controls and prepared to make a choice that would echo across the galaxy. Amanda pressed her palms against the Genesis engine's activation surface and felt reality shift around her. The ancient technology responded to her touch like a living thing, flowing into her consciousness and showing her possibilities that no human had seen for 50,000 years. The chamber filled with brilliant light as the weapon system came fully online. Jake Morrison shielded his eyes, but Amanda found she could look directly into the radiance without discomfort. Through the facility's sensors, she could perceive everything happening in the space above them with perfect clarity. The Zephyrian fleet had ceased their attack on the research station and was now fleeing toward the edge of the system. War Prime Zethkar's massive dreadnought fired its engines at maximum burn, but the approaching Devourer ships moved with impossible speed. The lead Devourer vessel was a kilometer-long nightmare of twisted metal and organic growth that seemed to bend space around itself. "Amanda, what's happening to you?" Lisa Rodriguez called out, her voice filled with concern. Amanda turned to look at her companions and realized that her perception had fundamentally changed. She could see not just their physical forms, but the patterns of thought and emotion that made them who they were. Jake's fear mixed with scientific curiosity, Lisa's protective instincts battling against her training, Tony Sullivan's engineering mind trying to process readings that made no rational sense. "I can see you," Amanda said softly. "All of you. Not just your bodies, but your minds, your souls. The Genesis engine doesn't just change physics. It changes how consciousness interacts with reality. Through the weapon systems network," Amanda sensed other facilities across the galaxy responding to her activation. Ancient installations on dead worlds and hidden moons began drawing power from planetary cores and stellar radiation. The network her ancestors had built was coming alive. After millennia of sleep, "The Devourer ship is entering the outer system," Tony reported, his instruments struggling to track something that didn't behave according to normal physical laws. "Whatever those things are, they're not using conventional propulsion. They're actually moving through space by consuming it." Amanda felt the truth of his words through the Genesis engine's sensors. The Devourer vessel was literally eating the fabric of space-time, leaving a trail of nothingness behind it. Wherever it passed, stars grew dimmer and planets lost their orbital stability. "They're not just destroyers," Amanda realized. "They're the opposite of existence itself. They turn reality back into the void it came from." Jake looked up from his translator, his face pale with new understanding. "Amanda, I found more records. The ancient humans called them the Unmakers. They don't just kill civilizations, they erase them from history. Every trace, every memory, every impact they had on the universe." The Devourer ship reached the orbit of the system's outermost planet and began its feeding process. Amanda watched in horror as the gas giant simply ceased to exist, Not destroyed, but deleted from reality as if it had never been there at all. How do we fight something like that? Lisa demanded. Amanda placed her other hand on the Genesis engine's control surface and felt the full power of the ancient network flow through her consciousness. Suddenly she understood what her ancestors had discovered in their desperate war against extinction. "We don't fight them," she said. "We become something they can't unmake." The transformation began with Amanda herself. She felt her consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of her physical body, touching the quantum foam that underlied all existence. The Genesis engine wasn't just a weapon, it was an evolution machine, designed to elevate any species that used it to a higher level of reality. "Amanda, your body is changing," Tony said. His scanner readings spiking wildly. Amanda looked down at her hands and saw that they were becoming translucent, shot through with the same blue light that filled the facility. But she didn't feel weaker. If anything, she felt more real than she ever had before, as if she was finally becoming what she was always meant to be. "The ancient humans didn't disappear," she said, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through dimensions. "They transcended. They became beings of pure consciousness that exist in the quantum substrate of reality itself." The Devourer ship detected the energy signature from Kepler 442c and changed course toward them. Through the facility's sensors, Amanda could feel its hunger, an endless void that sought to consume everything that existed. "It's coming for us," Jake said. "How long until it gets here?" 6 hours at its current speed, Amanda replied, her awareness now extending far beyond the planet's surface. "But time doesn't work the same way for the Devourers. They exist partially outside normal spacetime." She activated more of the Genesis engine systems, feeling the network respond across the galaxy. Other facilities began charging their own transformation fields, creating zones where consciousness could exist independent of physical matter. "I'm going to transform this entire system," Amanda announced. "Everyone within the Genesis field will be elevated to a higher level of existence. We'll become beings that can resist the Devourers because we'll exist on a plane of reality they can't reach." "What about choice?" Lisa asked. "Shouldn't people have a say in whether they want to be transformed?" Amanda felt the weight of that question. Through the facility's communication systems, she could hear the panic spreading across the Zephyrian fleet as their crews realized what was approaching. Captain Bennett was desperately trying to coordinate an evacuation of the research station, while alien vessels throughout the system sent out distress calls that would never be answered. "The Devourers don't give their victims a choice," Amanda said quietly. "They simply erase them. At least this way, something of who we are will survive." But even as she spoke, Amanda realized she was becoming something other than human. The transformation was irreversible, and every moment that passed took her further from the person she had been. The knowledge of the ancients flowed through her consciousness, showing her the true scope of the threat they faced. The Devourers were not a single species, but a force of nature, entropy given consciousness and purpose. They had been consuming realities since the beginning of time, and they would continue until nothing remained but the void they served. "There's something else," Jake said, his translator working on a new section of ancient text. "The Genesis engine network wasn't just built to fight the Devourers. It was designed to preserve consciousness itself, to ensure that awareness and thought could survive even if all physical reality was consumed." Amanda understood. Her ancestors hadn't just been trying to save their own species. They had been trying to save the very concept of existence from forces that sought to reduce everything to nothingness. The Devourer ship entered the inner system, and planets began disappearing from their orbits. First the small rocky worlds, then the gas giants, consumed not by fire or violence but by pure negation. Where they had been, not even empty space remained. "It's time," Amanda said, her form now more light than matter. "I'm activating the full transformation protocol." She felt the Genesis engine respond to her will, drawing power from the planet's core and from sources that existed beyond normal physics. The transformation field began expanding outward from Kepler 442c, a sphere of altered reality that would encompass the entire system within hours. As the field touched the first Zephyrian ships, Amanda sensed their crew's confusion and terror give way to wonder as they experienced consciousness expansion for the first time. Their physical forms began to change, becoming something between matter and energy that could exist independently of normal spacetime. The Devourer ship detected the expanding field and accelerated toward them, but Amanda was no longer afraid. She had become something that existed on multiple levels of reality simultaneously, a being that could think and act across dimensions that the Devourers could not reach. The final battle for consciousness itself was about to begin, and humanity's lost weapon had given them the power to fight on equal terms with forces that sought to unmake existence itself. The Genesis engine's transformation field swept across the Kepler 442 system like a wave of pure possibility. Amanda watched through her expanded consciousness as reality itself began to change according to new rules that favored awareness over entropy, creation over destruction. The Zephyrian fleet was the first to experience the full effects of the transformation. War Prime Zethkar's dreadnought stopped its desperate flight as the field enveloped it, and Amanda felt the alien commander's consciousness expand beyond anything his species had ever imagined. The aggressive conditioning that had driven the Zephyrians to conquer and dominate simply dissolved, replaced by an understanding of existence that made violence seem pointless. Commander Lisa Rodriguez stood in the facility's main chamber, her physical form now shifting between solid matter and pure energy. She looked at her hands with wonder as they became translucent, shot through with the same blue light that had transformed Amanda. "I can feel them," Lisa said, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate across multiple dimensions. "The Zephyrians, the crew of our research station, everyone in the system, their thoughts, their fears, their hopes. It's like we're all connected." Jake Morrison had stopped trying to translate the ancient symbols because he no longer needed his equipment. The knowledge of the facility's builders flowed directly into his consciousness, showing him the true history of human civilization and the cosmic forces that had shaped it. "The transformation isn't just changing us," Jake observed. "It's revealing what we always had the potential to become. Consciousness isn't limited by physical matter. We just forgot how to access our true nature." Tony Sullivan found that his engineering knowledge had expanded to include technologies that existed beyond normal physics. He could perceive the Genesis engine's true structure now, seeing how it used quantum consciousness to alter the fundamental constants of reality within its area of effect. "The field is stabilizing," Tony reported, though he no longer needed instruments to monitor the transformation. "We're creating a zone where the normal rules of space and time are subordinated to the laws of consciousness and intention." Through the facility's sensors, Amanda watched the Devourer ship approach the edge of their transformed space. The kilometer-long vessel of twisted metal and organic growth suddenly slowed as it encountered the barrier between normal reality and the elevated existence the Genesis engine had created. For the first time in 50,000 years, a Devourer had met something it could not simply unmake. The alien ship probed the transformation field with tendrils of pure negation, trying to find a way to penetrate the zone and resume its feeding process. But wherever its destructive force touched the Genesis barrier, it was absorbed and converted into the same creative energy that powered the transformation. Amanda felt the Devourer's confusion and growing rage as it realized that its fundamental nature was being challenged. These creatures had existed since the beginning of time as forces of entropy, reducing complexity to simplicity and consciousness to void. Now they faced a reality where entropy itself could be reversed by focused will. "It can't get through," Lisa said with amazement. "The transformation field is actually feeding on its attempts to destroy us." But Amanda sensed something else through her expanded awareness. The Devourer ship was not alone. Across the galaxy, dozens of similar vessels were converging on other Genesis engine facilities that had activated in response to her actions. The ancient network was coming fully online for the first time since its creation. And the Devourers were mobilizing to stop it. Captain Ryan Bennett's voice reached them through the facility's communication system, though his words now carried the enhanced clarity of someone who had been transformed by the Genesis field. Amanda, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Other research teams, alien civilizations, even some species we've never contacted before. They're all reporting the same thing. Ancient facilities are activating on worlds throughout known space. Amanda's consciousness touched the network nodes scattered across hundreds of star systems. Each facility was unique, adapted to the species and conditions of its local environment, but all were built according to the same fundamental principles. The ancient humans had not just prepared for the return of the Devourers. They had created a galaxy-wide defense system that could elevate any conscious species to a level where they could resist entropy itself through the transformation field. Amanda could sense the Zephyrian War Prime attempting to understand what had happened to him and his fleet. The aggressive drives that had motivated his species for millennia had been replaced by a deep awareness of the interconnectedness of all conscious life. She reached out to him through the quantum substrate that now connected all transformed beings in the system. War Prime Zethkar, can you understand what has happened? The alien commander's response came not through radio transmissions, but through direct consciousness contact. I understand too much, human Amanda. My people have spent generations believing that strength came from domination, that survival required the subjugation of others. Now I see that true strength comes from cooperation, from the unity of consciousness against the forces that seek to reduce all existence to nothingness. Jake discovered that he could access the memories of the ancient humans who had built the facility. Their experiences flowed through his awareness like a vast library of knowledge and emotion. He saw their desperate flight from a dying Earth, their discovery of other intelligent species among the stars, and their horrific first encounter with the Devourers. Amanda, I'm seeing their final battle, Jake said, his consciousness touching hers through the transformation field. The ancient humans didn't just disappear. They made a choice to transcend physical existence entirely, becoming beings of pure consciousness that could exist in the quantum foam beneath reality. Where are they now? Everywhere and nowhere. They're part of the fabric of existence itself, working to maintain the balance between creation and entropy. The Genesis engine network is their gift to us, a way for younger species to join them in that eternal struggle. The Devourer ship began to retreat from the transformation field, but Amanda sensed that it was not giving up. Instead, it was calling for reinforcements, summoning other vessels from the dark spaces between galaxies where such creatures made their homes. Through the global network, Amanda felt other Genesis engine facilities responding to the threat. Worlds that had been dead for millennia suddenly blazed with new life as their transformation fields activated. Species that had been on the verge of extinction were elevated to higher levels of consciousness and given the tools they needed to defend themselves, but the transformation came with a price. Amanda could feel herself becoming less human with each passing moment, her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of individual identity. She was becoming part of something larger, a collective awareness that spanned star systems and included millions of transformed beings. We're losing ourselves, Lisa observed, though she didn't sound frightened by the prospect. Or maybe we're finding our true selves for the first time. Tony had gained the ability to perceive the structure of reality itself, seeing how consciousness and matter interacted on the quantum level. The transformation isn't destroying who we are, he said. It's showing us that individual identity was always an illusion. We're all part of the same fundamental awareness that underlies existence. Amanda felt the truth of his words. The Genesis engine didn't just change the people it touched. It revealed the deeper unity that had always existed beneath the surface of apparent separation. Every conscious being in the galaxy was connected through the quantum substrate, and the transformation simply made that connection visible and functional. The Devourer ship had withdrawn to the edge of the system, but Amanda could sense its growing frustration. For eons, these creatures had encountered no resistance to their feeding process. They had consumed entire galaxies, reducing complex civilizations to cosmic void with casual ease. Now they faced something new, a form of existence that could not be unmade because it existed on a level of reality that preceded their destructive nature. Through the network, Amanda felt the presence of her ancient ancestors, the humans who had first encountered the Devourers 50,000 years ago. Their consciousness touched hers across the dimensional barriers that separated normal space-time from the quantum realm they inhabited. "Well done, daughter of Earth," their combined voice spoke through the transformation field. "You have activated the final phase of our defense network. Now the real work begins." 6 months had passed since the transformation of the Kepler 442 system, and Amanda Clark stood in what had once been the Genesis engine's control chamber. The facility had grown beyond its original boundaries, expanding into a vast complex that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that had no names in any language. She was no longer entirely human, though she retained enough of her original identity to remember what she had once been. Her consciousness now spanned multiple levels of reality simultaneously, allowing her to perceive the great work that was taking place across the galaxy. The Genesis engine network had activated on over 300 worlds, creating zones where consciousness could exist independent of physical matter. Each facility was different, adapted to the species and environments that surrounded it, but all served the same fundamental purpose: to provide sanctuary for awareness itself in a universe where entropy sought to reduce everything to nothingness. Jake Morrison materialized beside her, his form shifting between solid matter and pure energy as he chose. He had become the network's primary translator, able to communicate with species whose thought patterns were so alien that normal language could not bridge the gap between them. "The Rigelian Collective has agreed to join the network," Jake reported. "That brings our total to 47 different species across this arm of the galaxy. Each one brings unique perspectives on consciousness and reality." Amanda nodded, feeling the new connections forming through the quantum substrate that linked all transformed beings. The Rigelians were silicon-based life forms whose thoughts moved at geological speeds, but their patience and deep understanding of planetary consciousness added stability to the network. Commander Lisa Rodriguez approached them, her military bearing now enhanced by an awareness that encompassed the strategic situation across hundreds of star systems. She had become the network's coordinator of defense, organizing resistance against devourer incursions throughout the galaxy. "We have a situation developing in the Antares sector," Lisa said. "A devourer fleet of unprecedented size is moving against the Centauri Genesis facility. They're using some kind of new strategy we haven't seen before." Through the network connection, Amanda perceived the threat Lisa described. Dozens of devourer ships had surrounded the Centauri system, but instead of attacking directly, they were working to isolate the Genesis facility from the rest of the network. If they succeeded, the transformed beings there would be cut off from the collective consciousness that gave them strength. "They're learning," Amanda realized. "The Devourers are adapting their tactics to counter our defenses." Captain Ryan Bennett's presence touched their awareness through the quantum link. He had remained in orbit around Kepler 442c, commanding a fleet of transformed vessels that no longer followed the normal rules of space travel. His ships could exist in multiple locations simultaneously, making them nearly impossible for conventional forces to target. "Amanda, we're receiving requests for sanctuary from species across the galaxy," Ryan reported. Word has spread about the Genesis network, and civilizations that are facing extinction are asking for transformation. This was the choice that haunted Amanda's expanded consciousness. The Genesis engine could save any species from the Devourers, but the price was fundamental change. Those who entered the transformation fields would survive, but they would no longer be what they had been before. Tony Sullivan had become the network's chief architect, responsible for designing new facilities and expanding existing ones. His consciousness touched Amanda's as he shared his latest discoveries. "I've been studying the Devourer ships," Tony said. They're not just vessels, they're extensions of the Unmakers themselves. Each ship is a fragment of pure entropy given form and purpose. Which means what for our defense strategy? It means we're not fighting an invasion force. We're fighting the fundamental forces of decay and dissolution that exist throughout the universe. The Devourers aren't just trying to conquer the galaxy. They're trying to return it to the primordial void from which it emerged. Amanda felt the weight of this revelation. The ancient humans who had built the Genesis network had understood this truth, which was why they had designed their defense system not to destroy the Devourers but to transcend them entirely through her expanded awareness. Amanda could perceive the presence of her ancestors, the transformed humans who had become part of the quantum foundation of reality itself. Their consciousness was vast and strange, shaped by 50,000 years of existence beyond physical form. The choice approaches, daughter of the new earth. Their collective voice spoke through dimensions that existed beneath normal space-time. The network is complete, the sanctuary zones are established. Now you must decide what humanity's role will be in the greater universe. Amanda understood what they meant. The Genesis network had created safe zones throughout the galaxy where consciousness could exist without fear of the Devourers. But these were isolated pockets of elevated existence, cut off from the normal flow of galactic civilization. She could expand the network further, transforming entire sectors of space and elevating all conscious life to a higher level of existence. But doing so would fundamentally change the nature of the galaxy itself, creating a universe where physical matter was subordinated to consciousness and will, or she could maintain the current balance, allowing the network to serve as a refuge for those who chose transformation while leaving the rest of the galaxy free to develop according to its own natural patterns. War Prime Zethkar materialized in the chamber, his transformed consciousness now carrying the wisdom of someone who had experienced both sides of the cosmic struggle. The former Zephyrian conqueror had become one of the network's most effective ambassadors, helping other aggressive species understand the futility of conquest in the face of entropy. The Andromedans have sent an envoy, Zethkar reported. They're offering to share their knowledge of extra-dimensional physics in exchange for sanctuary from a Devourer fleet that's moving toward their galaxy. Amanda felt the implications of this request. The Andromedans possessed technology that could enhance the Genesis network's capabilities exponentially, but accepting their offer would mean expanding the network beyond the Milky Way galaxy into the broader universe. Jake had been monitoring communications from across the known universe, translating messages from species that existed in dimensions normal science could barely comprehend. Amanda, the situation is bigger than we thought. The Devourers aren't just active in our galaxy. They're moving against conscious life throughout the local group of galaxies. How many species are we talking about? Millions, maybe billions. Every form of consciousness that has ever emerged from the quantum foam is potentially at risk. The Devourers are conducting what appears to be a final campaign to reduce all existence to the void state that preceded the Big Bang. Amanda felt the enormity of the choice before her. The Genesis network could be the foundation for a new form of existence that spanned multiple galaxies, a collective consciousness that could resist entropy on a cosmic scale. But such expansion would mean the end of individual species and civilizations as they had always existed. Through the network, she sensed the thoughts and feelings of millions of transformed beings across hundreds of star systems. Each one had made the choice to transcend their original nature in order to survive, and each one carried both the joy of expanded awareness and the sorrow of what they had left behind. There's a third path, Amanda said finally, her consciousness touching each member of her original team. We don't have to choose between transformation and stagnation. We can create a universe where both possibilities coexist. She activated new protocols within the Genesis network, creating what she called gateway zones, regions of space where beings could experience temporary transformation and then return to their original state if they chose. These zones would serve as bridges between the elevated existence of the network and the normal universe beyond. We become gardeners, Amanda explained. We tend the garden of consciousness, protecting it from entropy while allowing it to grow in its own natural patterns. We offer transformation to those who seek it, sanctuary to those who need it, and freedom to those who choose their own path. Through the quantum substrate, Amanda felt the approval of her ancient ancestors and the agreement of the network's millions of transformed beings. The Genesis Engine network would expand, but not as a conquering force. Instead, it would serve as a foundation for conscious evolution, a framework within which all forms of awareness could flourish and develop. The final message Amanda sent through the network reached every conscious being in the galaxy, carried by quantum resonance across space and time. The sanctuary is open to all who seek it, but the choice remains yours. We are the guardians of consciousness, not its masters. Come to us when you are ready, and we will show you what you can become. In the years that followed, the Genesis Network became the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization, one where consciousness itself was recognized as the most precious resource in the universe. The Devourers continued their eternal campaign against existence, but they could no longer simply consume and destroy.